Hello and welcome to another edition of No Tie C-Suite. We have an interesting topic today because we talk about knowing your numbers, and it's something that crosses a lot of areas of business. But specifically today, we want to talk about the fact that Google Analytics is shutting down. And we want to know why that matters and what you need to do about it. So we've called upon an expert. Annette Welsford is joining us, and she is very much in that space with her business. So Annette, firstly, thank you and welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's a topic that I'm very passionate about. So I'm very keen to make sure that everybody understands what's going on and make sure that they know what to do.
Yeah, well, I think that's the first thing is that certainly I know from a marketing perspective that looking at Google Analytics is a critical part of any website, and it's been something that's been ingrained in us for some period of time, although perhaps with a lot of people with a lack of understanding of what they're actually looking at. And I think that goes to the heart of the topic of knowing your numbers. But let's first start off, Annette, and just ask you purely what is actually happening with Google Analytics, and what is the immediate course of action people need to take?
Okay, so Google Analytics has been around for a very long time, since 2005, and it's evolved. There's been a lot of sort of iterations as things have changed. What it is a free reporting tool that Google provides, and you put a bit of code on your website and you go into Google Analytics and you can see all sorts of amazing information that really helps you understand what's happening with your website and all the things that matter in your online business or with your website and people visiting it and contacting you, all that sort of thing. And I'll mention that in a little bit. In a little bit more depth in a moment. But basically, the Google Analytics 3, which it's now known as, which has been around for a long time, is shutting down. And the reason that they're doing that is it no longer serves the kind of technology that we have now. So when it was first built and then it was, upgraded and all the Band-Aids added to help it make sure it could do a few more things, it reached the point where you just couldn't put any more Band-Aids on it. It can't track mobile phone to computer to laptop to iPad type of movements, and there's quite a few things that it can't do. And so they've been building a new version of it in the background for the last couple of years, and that's called Google Analytics 4, but it's completely different. So it's not a straight upgrade, press a button and go from 3 to 4. You actually have to install 4 completely separately.
So that's going to require resources, right? In terms of doing that, because I assume there's a bit of a process involved in
There is,
doing that.
yeah, there is. So, and it's very important that we do it for a few reasons. One, Google Analytics is they're actually closing it on June 30th, 2023. And Google Analytics 4 has been around now for a few months, but it will be the only form of Google Analytics tracking that you will have come 1st of July 2023. And so the reason that we're encouraging everybody to make sure that they have it installed on their website and set up properly now is so that in next year, well, when that happens, you've got some historical data to look back on. So you can see what happened last month and the previous 3 months and the previous 6 months and that sort of thing.
Pierre, I know bring you into the equation. I know knowing your numbers is something that you're pretty fond of in the financial space, but yeah, this is it's an important thing to know, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. I think it's one of those things where a lot of time money is spent on Google advertising or on web advertising, and knowing kind of how your customers react and knowing where your customers come from is a massive part of it. So I think from a finance point of view, that investment into that side is always it's sometimes a difficult thing to justify when you're looking and you're investing money into something and there's no changes. But I think Annette brought up a very important thing in terms of that historic tracking where installing something earlier is probably a good thing so that you do get that history. One question I did have for you, Ned, when you said that the Google Analytics 3 will stop completely, well, does that mean that all the old data and all the old tracking data will be lost before when you switch over from 3 to 4? Or will they retain some of that?
They will. I think it's going to be available for a couple of years.
Okay.
But it'll be separate. They're two separate accounts. They're not joined up. So you'll have to look at one account to see the last few years worth, the GA3, the old one, and then you go into your GA4 account to look at what's happening now.
Okay, all right. So from that point of view, from a finance point of view, we'll have to invest some resources into that to make sure that we keep the old one going and then switching over to the new one and make sure we measure the same analytics at the same time.
Yes. Well, there's actually no money or cost involved with Google Analytics at all. They're free tools that Google provides. Where the investment comes is having that installed and set up properly, and because you can look at it from a complete novice point of view and go, what does all this mean, and how come it's not showing me the stuff that I really want to see? And that's so with Google Analytics 3, if I could just perhaps touch a little bit on what you get with that and how that's going to change. So historically, the Google Analytics 3 shows you things like lovely reports. You go in there and you can see all the visitors that have come to your website, not their names or anything like that, but you can see what city they've come from, country. If you've got it switched on, and a lot of people don't, but you can switch on demographics and see their age, their gender, what kind of topics they're interested in, what technology they're using. Are they using a laptop or a desktop or mobile phone? Where did they come from? Did they come from through Facebook? Did they do a search? Did they click on an ad in a campaign? Which pages did they visit on your site? How long did they spend on every page? When they're on that page, which page did they go to next? How long did it take the pages and the sites to load? If you've got a search bar, what did they type into the search bar? Did they click the phone number to call you? Did they fill out a form? Did they watch your videos? What kind of goals have you set up and how many of them have you achieved? If you've got e-commerce, and this is where your numbers come in, Pierre, you can track very, very finitely every sale of every product, the sources, the acquisition, so the attribution, where they came from. Was it if you've sold $1,000 worth this week, how many of them came from Google ads, how many came from Google searches, how many came from Facebook ads, referred from other sites, that sort of stuff. So this information, as you would appreciate, is really useful for campaign planning, so you can see where your customers are coming from and where they're not coming from, so you can turn those ones off because they're just not working. Their demographics, so you're picking the right people to target, the seasonal highs and lows, the content planning. I find this really useful because my background is, I have a marketing agency and I'm a writer. And so I like to look at all the different pages, how long they spent on them and how long they didn't. And that tells me what's really popular and what's a complete waste of time. And it also helps our designers with website, site and user experience planning, because they're just not going to these pages, or when they get there, they're not spending much time there. So that helps us make the website and the user experience better. But that's not going to happen anymore, because all of that relies on cookies, and with the GDPR and all sorts of security regulations, tightening around the world, even browsers like Chrome are going to stop using cookies. Now, cookies are bits of code that go onto your website so people can track where you've been and that sort of stuff. So there's no more cookie tracking.
No, perfect. Thank you very much, Neda. I'm sure Yuriy wants to add something to here in the systems and everything.
From system perspective, obviously, what we can't measure, we can't control, and I just described existing process of tracking user experience on the website, from the entering website and down to the very final outcome, if it's e-commerce, if it's online selling tool. My question is, with the change of the tool, because Google Analytics is just a tool, whether there are any changes to the process, what kind of changes come into the whole process of measuring user experience of with the touch points with the business?
Sure. It's actually going to be a lot better, but it's just going to be done differently. So they've actually built Google Analytics 4 from the ground up to cater for today's method of people online, which is, let's face it, predominantly on mobile phones. And sometimes we do, start a transaction on doing a search maybe on a mobile phone, and then we might move that to the computer to finish. So how's Google going to track that? Well, they don't actually track it. What their Google Analytics 4 doesn't use cookies. It uses machine learning and lots of blended data from several sources. So it's, AI, I suppose, and modeling to track events and report on data. And it's actually, they've been, building this for the last couple of years, and they've actually said that it's a lot more accurate than the cookie reporting that they've been doing, because people can block cookies, and people have been blocking cookies, so that you're not getting the true representation on your website of visitors. And we don't know if it's 80% or 90% or 98% true. No one knows, because no one knows how many people have blocked cookies. But the way of the future is that it's AI is basically going to has taken over as the method of data capture, I suppose, and data reporting, and the way that Google Analytics 4 is going to work. So it's basically an analysis engine going forward, not really a reporting tool. And that's the big difference. So
I think the interesting thing is have you had an opportunity yet to do a bit of a comparison? Because that's going to be the interesting thing really for people, is seeing if they've looked at what's in Google Analytics, if it's going to change some of the reality for them and give them more informed information.
Yes, we've had Google Analytics 4 set up on all of our sites and client sites for several months now. It is difficult to do as a comparison because the reporting is totally, so the new Google Analytics 4 doesn't really come with very many reports. The old one is just all reports, and the new one is, there might be 2 or 3 standard kind of reports. The rest of them we have to, set up ourselves, because the method of tracking is not through cookies, it's through events. And so there's some standard events, and the events are things like clicking a link, clicking a button, scrolling to the bottom of the page, filling out a form, that sort of stuff. There's actually thousands of events. I didn't realize this. And so the new way of setting up the reports is to firstly identify what events we want to track, and then build reports that show those events in a way that is similar to what we're used to seeing in Google Analytics 3. And that's what takes a bit of time, because they don't have fabulous reporting, easy reporting tools in Google Analytics 4. You actually got to set up all the events tracking and then take all that into Google Data Studio, which is another tool that Google provides, and show all the reports in there.
So there's going to be a bit of effort involved for people wanting to find how to do it. But I think the important thing is you're bringing into the equation here is that this really is going to help better inform what you need to be doing in your business, because it's not just about what happens online. What happens online is a mirror of what people really want to be gaining from you, no matter what your product or service is.
Yeah, more than ever. having Google Analytics in your business, particularly if you do have a website, and let's face it, if you don't have a website and you're in business these days, and if you're in business and you don't have a website, you don't exist, because everybody is online. That's where we live. So it is more important than ever, if you are going to be spending money on, or spending efforts on marketing, to get people to your website, to do whatever it is you want them to do, to ring you, to fill out a form, make an inquiry, buy something, whatever. You've got to have Google Analytics to know how to do all that. And if Google Analytics 3 has been taken away, you've got to have Google Analytics 4. And it really does need to be set up correctly so that you get the most. It is such a valuable tool. I must confess, as a bit of a nerd, I am in Google Analytics probably at least 2 or 3 times a day, checking things out for our business and our clients' business. And that's where the decision-making comes from.
Yeah, I think that is a really important factor, isn't it? I mean, when you're, Yuriy, when you're designing systems and things in place for your business and directing where people want to go, you want to know as much about them as possible and what they're looking at.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to add, especially if the website carries some functionality, so it's not just an informational sort of attraction tool or like a online business card. If it has online store or any application that drives people buying, logical buying behavior, this is indeed a very, very important tool and very important measures to look at, because this is, pretty much this is measurement of the cash flow. That's at the very, very entry level, but that's entry of the cash flow into the business.
Yeah,
that's very true, Anthony. Sorry, Yuriy. Anthony. I think from that point of view, that from a commerce point of view, it's incredibly important, but it's that return on investment side of things, where if you know who to market to and what their behavior is and what their demographic is, it makes it easier, because you can pitch the message to someone specifically, or to a group or someone specifically, as I said. Yeah.
I think, I know yesterday even I was with a client and we were discussing what's happening with their particular site. And what was fascinating was looking at the Google Analytics. In this particular case, it's more research focused. So actually there's very little mobile usage at all. And areas that they thought were going to be incredibly popular were not. And the areas that are continuously, and we were tracking over extended periods, over a couple of years, even looking back, it's fairly consistent what pages people were attracted to in the first place. And what's interesting is we're looking at how we actually, and I think this is true in the real world as well, how you actually get people from one part to another. So whilst they're coming in and looking at something, the challenge is as well as saying, okay, well, you've come in here and we get that you're attracted to this first, but how do we get you to this product? And I mean, if you think about a supermarket, it's the same thing, right? That you go in looking for the tomato sauce, but they throw barbecue sauce at you that you didn't know was there. And so you go and buy the barbecue sauce as well. And I think that's the challenge as well, is also trying to utilize the stuff, not just to say this is what people are interested in, but how do we draw their focus into other areas that may be more profitable for a business, or new areas that they want to take them into. And Annette, how much of a role does that play for you in the way you're designing things?
Well, actually, it's a huge role. One of the things that is very important to do, particularly when you're redesigning a website, is to install tracking. It's called, there's several versions of it, but it's tracking that anonymously allows us to view user behavior across the site. And you can see how far down a page they'll scroll, where they stopped and gazed, if you like. And it follows fingers or mouse. It's really weird. It's like watching somebody walk through a shop and see which kind of parts and clothes or products they stop and look at, and and what they, touch and feel, and they look at the price, and then they move on to they go around the corner, they go into another shop. It's really incredible. You can watch all that anonymously, and you can see what buttons they click on. So they're called heat maps, and so you can see, the buttons that are really, really clicked a lot and ones that aren't. Well, the ones that aren't, that shows us that they're either in the wrong place, too far down, or they're the wrong color, no one sees them, or there's the call to action on them is pretty awful, like submit. Who wants to submit anything? Or subscribe, even worse. Nobody wants to subscribe. So all of this data that we collect from watching these heat maps helps us to improve and keep customers on the site longer. One site that we did, we watched people for about 3 weeks, changed the site completely, and sales increased by 300% within, I think it was 6 months, because we made the customer journey shorter and quicker and not so many steps.
Yeah, it's always important. There's so much to take in with this, and I think it goes back to the original theme that we started with here, is knowing your numbers, and I think that's so incredibly important. And I know we haven't really touched on it. We might save it up for another time, but obviously this starts to inform what you might want to do in terms of content and SEO, which ultimately is the goal as well, isn't it, to improve your rankings on Google so that more people are finding you in the first place. And
yes.
That also brings into the equation. So I might just invite everyone to wrap up a little bit. Pierre, knowing your numbers, I know it's dear to your heart. What's your thoughts on all of this in terms of Google and the importance it's going to play in the business?
I think what Annette said last, increasing sales by 300%, that's music to my ears, my friend.
Well, why wouldn't it be? And Yuri, you'd jump on the back of that as well.
Well, yeah, 300%. Everyone wants those increases in 6 months in every business. Again, from systems and processes perspective, numbers within the efficiency is an important measure that helps to reduce the costs. And even with not that dramatic jump in sales, there could be a better margin.
Absolutely. And look, and just to wrap things up, I know you've got an offer for all of the listeners of the podcast in terms of looking at Google Analytics 4 and a special setup that you're offering for people. Do you want to give us a bit of detail?
Sure, yeah. And just to iterate, knowing your numbers is essential. And we want to make sure that everybody does know their numbers, and they know not only that the numbers are being collected, but how to read them. So what the offer that we've got is to set up Google Analytics 4 on websites, people's websites, and that will involve creating the Google Analytics 4 account and adding the business owner and any team members that they wish as users, admin users, creating what we call a Google Tag Manager account, which is essential. It's where the codes are stored and all the events are created, and configuring automatic event tracking of the basic events that you will need, and configuring up to several recommended events, and adding the tracking code to your website. It's a bit of a technical thing, but once it's done, it's done and it's up and running, and you'll be collecting the data and ready for, well, you'll be collecting the data now, and you'll be all set up so that when Google Analytics 3 is turned off, it doesn't really make any difference to your business because you've got valuable data coming in. So normally our fee for doing all that is $500, but we're offering a 25% discount to your listeners with a special code. And the code is going to be, I think you're going to publish it in the notes, but it's NOTI25. So, and the link to where you can take advantage of that will provide in the notes. Is that right, Anthony?
Yeah, absolutely. We will make sure everyone knows that. And of course, if for some reason you can't see the notes and you want to know, all you've got to do is message any of us and we would be happy to share that information with you. Annette, thank you so much for joining us. And really commonsensemarketing.com.au for more information about your business, and really appreciate all of the insights into Google Analytics. And I'm sure we're going to have you back to talk a little bit about SEO and the value that places on business as well. And to anyone listening in, if you have any more questions and you want us to address as a panel, or you'd like to be a guest on the show, all you got to do is contact us. Usually through LinkedIn is one of the best ways to do that. So thank you, and we look forward to you joining us on another episode of No Ties next week.